Hello, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on where you tune in from, in which part of the world. I'm Rick Palenhorst. I'm CEO of DASA, and I'm today's host for an awesome webinar we have in store for you. It's called How to Manage the Value of Your Product. It's one of the webinars in a series of webinars we organize around our product management product suite. On the next slide, I start by giving you a little bit of context. A month ago, we gave an introduction webinar on our upcoming suite of products on product management. It had very nice responses from the community and from all kinds of organizations. So we're very proud of that and looking really forward to releasing those new products soon. Actually, next week, there will be a first delivery of a certification program in DASA product management. So if you haven't signed up yet, this is still an opportunity to do so. It's a combination of a delivery together with a train-the-trainer session. So if you're contemplating for whether you would like to be a trainer, this is also your chance to immediately certify for that. A week later, we have a train-the-facilitator session where we focus on the guidance products in the value box that we have created for organizations to leverage and building a capability around product management. And the last 2 weeks, we focused on specific topics around product management. We had a nice webinar on March 21st around transitioning from projects to product mindset. Last week, with Leon Smith, we focused on mastering product discovery. And today, last in that series, we have a great webinar on managing the value of your product. And before I announce to you the speaker for today, on the next slide, a little bit of housekeeping to share with you. There will be a recording made available, so if you would like to rewatch or share it with people, it's all possible. We'll record the session and make it available. Please make it interactive. If you have any questions or comments, you can ask them during the session, but use the comment section to pose your questions. If you have any other questions or feedback after the session, you can also always send that to our info@dasa.org email address. And if you would like to have more information on DASA, what we're up to, what we're doing, there's a lot of information on our website as well. With that being said, and no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dave van Herpen, which is quite an experienced transformation consultant, coach, and trainer, quite active in our DASA ecosystem, involved with multiple products, being one of the lead authors for the product management suite. But he is much better than me in introducing himself properly. So here's the mic to you, Dave.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks for being
here. I'm glad I'm still a bit better in introducing myself. I am based in the Netherlands, and I'm an independent change enabler. And over the past 25 years, I've been helping clients, like teams and management teams, in their journey to become a high-performing organization. So clients include Heineken, Bosch, Philips, Rabobank, Emirates, etc. Right now, I'm involved with a large Dutch academic hospital to optimize their product, service, and portfolio management. So a lot of great things have happened, and I hope will happen in the future as well. Right now, indeed, as Rick said, I'm also involved in DASA in developing multiple products, for instance, the portfolio and product schemes, the certification programs, the value boxes. So one of those items we'll be discussing today. So maybe go to the next slide, which shows the goals of today's session, right?
Yes.
So what I'd like to do in the next, let's say 30 minutes, a bit less, we will have the main goal will be that we have a common understanding of what value and experience really are all about and why they are so important. You should have some practical ideas at the end on how you can actually start defining value and measure experience. You may wonder why we talk about value and experience as separate constructs. Well, it's because they actually are two different perspectives. And value is more about factual outcomes of your product deliveries. Well, experience is more specifically the sentiment your products leave behind when your customer or employees or whichever stakeholder actually interacts with the product, whether they're developing it or using it in any way throughout this life cycle. So there's actually two different perspectives. Let's dive into those items right away. So next, let's first talk about value, right? So the value, as you can see in the next slide, value is really a loaded term, and everyone confirms how important it is, but only a few organizations actually really consistently measure it and use it proactively as an improvement mechanism. And why is that, right? So why is value so hard to grasp? Well, first, it's because it's really qualitative and subjective. So subjective, and in a lot of cases, we also see that it's uncertain, especially if you are active in complex environments. You don't know upfront what the actual delivered value will be. So you need to have something in place in order to continuously measure this. It also takes time to measure, which makes it hard to understand real time what the benefits of the changes have really been that you've put through. And often it's quite disentangled from the overarching drivers or strategic themes. So it's not always very clear what is the potential value of one specific product increment compared to the other, and also in relation to the overarching themes. So in order to do so, let's on the next slide we can start having a discussion what value actually really is. And actually, there's not a lot of very practical material in my experience on value, but I should say that Mark Schwartz's book is maybe one of those more practical pieces of guidance out there. And what he explicitly connected was value to the concept of hypothesis. And this is actually really crucial to really understand it. Well, it remains a hypothesis until you actually have used it, until the recipient of the product or service has actually used it. And until then, you don't know whether the intended value is generated, yes or no. Which means that it's fundamental to use short feedback loops to validate the actual delivery, right? So until it's been actually used or delivered, you don't know if you have actually delivered the value you thought of before.
Yeah, so it triggers me, Dave, because I think the word value is maybe a little bit overused or easily used in organizations. Well, this definition really helps making clear that you have to test the hypotheses. Otherwise, it's still this assumption, right? So it's
absolutely
it explains what you need to do to actually make sure that you're on the right track.
Absolutely, and it's very easy for an organization to assume your way to destruction, right? So it's very it's very essential that you validate as soon as possible. Yeah. On the next slide, we can actually have a look at how you can couple the product lifecycle to validating the actual delivery. And as you see here, the desired value, it actually varies per product lifecycle stage. So we have different stages which ask for different benefits. For instance, during introduction, you focus on market awareness. You want to measure customer acquisition rates. You want to have a look at feedback responsiveness as main key metrics. And fast feedback on experiments is really essential at this stage. Then during growth, you probably want to highlight market share and the growth in market share. You want to highlight customer retention. You want to have a look at product feature adoption scores. And then when you're at maturity, value can be efficiency or cost management, so low cost. It can also be to explore new markets for your products or to increase your profit margins or ROI. And when you're in decline, so at the end of your life cycle, you probably want to address some discontinuation or transformation type of metrics. You want to monitor your sales decline rate. Is it actually going down, yes or no? And you want to make sure that you reduce operational costs, especially for those products at the end of the life cycle. So depending where you are in this life cycle and the stage, you want to measure, you have different IDs of value.
Cool.
And on the next slide, what you can see here is that we have seen that value differs per life cycle stage, but it's also very important to understand that value itself also goes through a specific life cycle. And this framework here that you see of value management, it provides insights into the several perspectives on value. And it shows the importance of taking value seriously throughout the entire delivery process. So not only at the beginning or the end, also in between. So from strategy development until execution. And it actually shows the three main stages of value. It starts with designing value. You define it. Then you create it. So you start delivering your products and you actually create value. And you want to validate whether you have actually delivered value, yes or no. And learn from it, of course. And it's really fundamental to consider all three aspects. If you only define desired value upfront, but you do not validate it, once you have realized your product or product increments, it will create some kind of perverse incentives. I've seen this too many times in the organization, where you just make heavenly forecasts at the beginning of any initiatives, because there's no one who cares if it really delivers the value that you have forecasted. If you don't have that feedback loop in place, everyone will predict their own initiatives as high as possible.
I think it also ties nicely to this move from project to product, right? Because in project-driven organizations, indeed, the behavior often I saw is there's a nice business case or value case being made. You sometimes try to make it a little bit more fancy and maybe unrealistic, but you know that this benefit tracking part, the value learning stage, is probably not done that much of, and you can get away and get funding for your project, and then you get started, the program manager, for example. While
Absolutely.
in a product organization, you would like to have much more iterative thinking, right, on whether you are still right on track and what is the most valuable thing to spend any investment on now.
Absolutely, and especially a product, it will be discharged at some point in time when you have done for instance, your value creation. But afterwards, when you have delivered something, you want to keep measuring, keep learning, keep monitoring, actually, if it really does deliver any value, and improve from there. And that's where the product mindset comes in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Now, in order to make these three stages actually flow in coherence, then a solid governance is needed, which is what you see at the top. And think about real clear roles and responsibilities. So who's in charge of defining the value, who reports on it during realization, who validates if it's actually achieved. So that's important to actually have set. And also during those stages, it's really crucial that you optimize and organize optimally for the best value delivery in the end. So you focus on measuring and improving the flow continuously to help make sure that you have a continuous and early validation of your hypothesis and whether you're actually delivering your value, yes or no. So next slide. It's more of the bridge towards the next element, which is we've seen that value, it's crucial to measure from beginning to end. But there's a point in time where also experience comes in, because we all know about customer experience, we all know about user experience, and we probably all understand how it's related to product management practices. So what's important here is that, especially also this one, this quote, it shows that value is not always explicitly available somewhere on a shelf. It's ready to be picked up by the organization, but there's actually quite significant effort that you need to make and focus that's needed on all different aspects of the eventual experience in order to see if we can enrich, the available data which we have. The value data, which you can, and sometimes easily measure, and sometimes it's a bit harder, but to enrich that value data with actual experience and sentiment data. And that helps you actually to validate your value hypothesis even better. Mm-hmm. It helps you actually to see, are we building the right products? Are we establishing the right enablers? Do they function in the right way? Are they being used by the user or by the customer as intended? Now, in the next slide, we have a view on the different perspectives that you can have on experience. And This is essential to understand that experience is not just a grade or a number like a 9 or a 10 or an NPS score or whatever, that we need to focus on. And it's actually it's a lot broader than that, and it really should help us if you look at, for instance, customer experience and user experience. Those are typical things that we know how to focus on. We find them important. Actually, building on product teams, as we saw also in the previous webinars, CX and UX are really essential to build into your product team as really important capabilities. But on the other end, it's also crucial to make sure that we have a total view of the experience our customers have with our products or services, or even bigger, with our company or brand, right? So it's not only on specific interactions or specific product increments, it's also about the whole that we want to have a view on the experience on. And measuring those types of experience, they can be tricky, especially when you're only using surveys and forms, right? So to really ask about the real experience or sentiment that they have when they are actually using your product. So that's also why it's great to see that we see an adoption of a lot of new techniques like AI or semantic analysis, where we can capture user or customer experience not only by asking people and users and customers, but also extracting it in a technological way. It's a lot less disruptive, and you also prevent things like survey fatigue, etc. So you're able to observe the user or customer in their natural habitat, in the natural environment, actually using the products and seeing if they actually deliver the value you thought they would deliver. But just as important, it's also essential to capture the experience of the other side, so of the provider. So it's it may be your own employees who actually provide the products or services, who actually have a part in developing it. So it's also about developer experience, something which is quite big at the moment in the whole DevOps area. But also maybe partners in our ecosystem who also have a role in actually creating or building or delivering the products that we want to get to our clients. So please keep a broad view on experience and not just focus on CX and UX there. The next slide, it shows an example of how you can actually use the construct of journeys to capture user, customer, employee, or partner experiences or whatsoever. So it really helps to map a journey in order to establish a view on the desired experience end to end, through the eyes of the user, customer, or employee, or whoever we want to extract the experience from. And we do this by starting with a basic comprehension. How are our users, customers, or employees, how they are interacting with our products, in order to actually extract and see what kind of different touch points they encounter along the way. And visualizing those journeys, it helps to identify emotions and pain points that they encounter. And based on those, we can see how can we actually craft the best interactions with those stakeholders for those touch points, in order to make sure that we improve satisfaction and loyalty with those users, customers, etc. It also helps us to identify potential bottlenecks, streamline the interactions, etc. And finally, also, of course, keeping track of changing experiences throughout the entire life cycle of the products, and that's really fundamental. Now, the next slide, it also gives the idea that, and this is a very fundamental notion. The last remark about managing and making sure that you keep track of experiences throughout the life cycle is not arbitrary, because continuous improvement and continuous learning, that's a critical activity in managing experiences. Too often, we see that desired experiences are designed. So we want to have this experience with our user or developer or whatsoever, and we build that into the product or the processes. But it's not universally measured or validated. And when we are doing this, so when we are validating in real life, in production, when we have actually delivered the products, are we then also translating, whatever those experiences are into tangible improvements into the same product? So if you ask for the experience, if you measure the experience, and in a lot of cases, users or customers actually know that something is being measured, yes or no, or they're being asked for it, or whichever way, it's really important that you communicate back what kind of improvements that we make with the feedback that you provided to us, whether it's made explicit or implicit. Because otherwise, will a person who just provided you essential feedback, will that same person, how will that person feel if the feedback is not being taken into account by the product team, and there's no feedback loop back, right? So probably the next time the feedback will not be there anymore.
Yeah, makes sense.
What in the next slide, it shows that we want to, especially also from a DevOps point of view, and have continuous feedback loops, which is one of the key DevOps practices that we use. We want to make sure that all of the experience data that we collect, that we feed it back, right? So if you collect and use the experience data in the right way, it can be a very powerful tool to any product manager. So first, experience data, it really helps to close the feedback loop as a continuous loop from the DevOps mindset. Because if we know how our users, customers, or developers actually experience the products or delivering them, or building them or testing them or whatsoever, and we can use that data to create even better experiences in the future. And also we can use the experience data to create targeted communications towards all of the stakeholders to improve their happiness in the end. And the product teams actually derive a lot of value from the experience data that they recover, to actually enhance the products and to collect, pride, but also complaints. Those are really essential ingredients to keep improving.
Yeah.
On the next slide, this is the last one of the experience part, where actually value and experience come together, because you run into the question, so how can you actually start with this? How can you start measuring value and experience, start integrating it, start validating it in the right way? And same as in our overall product management approach, introducing value and experience management in the right way, it's always about starting small, preferably by running multiple experiments at the same time, so that you can learn from multiple insights and see which approach or which instruments work best in which situation, and then learn and scale up from there. So it's very simple and straightforward, but first you need to deliver evidence. Does it work? In which way does it work best? And that's always a better idea than just introducing it as a big bang for all of your products and teams at one go. And you will need to start using the right tools to measure value and to measure experience. And you will need to provide support for the teams to embrace and implement it and start using the data in the right way. But you need to start simple and small and then grow incrementally.
Dave, a question on that, because in my experience working in a product team, adopting agile DevOps principles as practices is something that takes a learning curve as well. So in many organizations, it takes some time to reach a certain plateau of productivity, get collaboration, psychological safety in place, of course, also get use of so some basics that you would expect in a team that's working, for example, in a Scrum methodology or another framework. Would you recommend that they still could start small with experience management, value management from day one, or would that be a little bit later down the road? What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, yes. So also there, I would prefer to start small, but as I said, you will need some basic tools or some basic data to start with, and For that, you can either learn from other teams, or you can just start collecting the value data that's needed, or start collecting experience data. Start asking your customer what the experience is. Start asking your developer whether he or she has liked actually and has had to put a lot of effort in developing something, or in collecting feedback on whether something is working, yes or no, creating new environments in order to test or whatsoever. That collecting that experience, it can already start by just asking people. But if you want to scale up, if you want to actually collect more and more data, if you have more users, especially if you have global products, then it may be really handy to have some tools in place for this. So if you're able to facilitate the first teams with some basic instruments for this, they can just start measuring the stuff and validating it, and then learn from there, and use that as a good case to implement it in the rest of your organization.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. So the next week we end up to the question: so how can DASA actually help here? How does this view on value and experience really relate to our product management suite? So, and this actually is one of the answers. Together with Timo and Leon, who did the first two webinars, we developed this framework that is also part of the DASA product management training, and is also part of the value box and the instruments and the assessment, etc. So it's a really fundamental framework that really can help you here. And at the outer layer, you see actually you see the value operations part, where we design, measure, and actually validate value and experience data. And in the middle, you see the product life cycle, and you see a lot of the dimensions of product management. But the outer layer is really crucial on what we just talked about. And for our product management value box, for which we have a TTF coming up pretty soon. And I think the next slide shows a bit more about this. So we have 5 different products, which will come live over the next few weeks. And especially if you look at the right one, so the product management guidance paper, that one is really focusing on what we just talked about. So that one actually combines a lot of good practices, a lot of examples, and a lot of guidance to start up measuring value, validating value, and the same goes for experience in your organization and beyond.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So wrapping up the webinar in a few key statements. I hope that it gave you some basic insights into value, experience, and how those two interrelate. I also hope I have given you some ideas how you can actually, really peel off all of the several stages of value and the different types and perspectives on experience. And I'm really sure that it is, if you use it well, if you apply it well, it can be an absolute catalyzer for your product management capability in the short and long run. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I'm not sure if there are any questions.
Yeah, actually, there is a great question from Jan van den Brink.
Yeah.
So let's dive in immediately, and maybe it triggers other people to come up with questions. We might not be able to answer them all, but please share them afterwards, of course. The question is, how can value and experience management become part of the way of working and the responsibility of teams, or specifically DevOps teams? And how can you convince them on the importance for their own work? What would be, Dave?
I would say by asking questions, not by saying you need to use this or you need to do this, but just by asking a few good questions, a few powerful questions. Like, so you're a team and you're developing products, and do you want to know how your products are being perceived, and whether
a bit rhetorical question, I guess. But
a bit, maybe. maybe. But then you ask, so what do you have in place in order to ensure or make sure or validate whether it actually does deliver the value that you want it to deliver. And do you want to take pride of, whatever works, or do you want to learn for whatever doesn't work? To actually really start understanding your customers. And it helps also to engage the continuing dialogues with your customers, and that is always a good thing, I would say. But I would really strongly use the potential of powerful questions here.
I think it's also nicely relates to our DASA principles, right? The first one is customer-centric action. We see so many teams still working hard and with all their passion on IT solutions, but sometimes losing track of for who they actually do this. And these kind of things trigger them to reflect on how well have we established this feedback loop with our end user, our client, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to add on that, I also think because part of the question is also how can it be embedded in the way of working. I'm really confident that product management, whether you are a product owner or a product manager or whatever, it is essential that you understand also what is the feedback that we get from our stakeholders and our customers and users, but also from the people developing this, and how do we collect this, and most importantly, how can we actually put this on our backlog, and how can we make the coupling between all the data that we receive from the market, and use that as feedback to actually create new backlog items, or to help prioritize them in a better way, because we continuously get feedback on whether something delivers any value or not, which is really a crucial feature for our product. Well, then that may mean that some of the new features or some of the enablers that enable that one may be higher on your backlog for the next sprint.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I guess I hope, Jan, that we answered your question nicely. We have to move on because time is already up, unfortunately. Last slide to share with you all. As I said before, we have next week the first delivery of DASA product management. There's still a few seats available. There's also a promotion. If you would enroll for this course, you can either choose a discount on that seat, which is of course always nice, but even better perhaps is offer number 1 on this slide, because you can also get a self-paced certification bundle for free for our DevOps fundamentals program. And I think that's can be quite a relevant thing to invest in, because today also we discussed a few things around key principles and practices around product thinking, DevOps and Agile that you need to take at heart before you can actually dive in as a product team with value management in general. So that could be a nice opportunity for you to have that bundle. And if you would be interested in becoming an instructor or facilitator for one of the programs and products that we're building, please let us know, because we need the community, and we actively use the community to spread the word and make impact in as many enterprises as possible. So would love to work with you as well. With that being said, thank you all for your attention. I hope you have learned something nice today. I did actually. Made some notes and have many more questions for Dave, but we will do that offline. Thanks, and see you soon. Enjoy your day.
Bye.